Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective After Dark. It's been a long day. Matthew and I are working really hard to wrap up the editing on that Caden Stearns video. I'm so proud of what Matthew was able to do, and I'm excited for the world to see how awesome of a person Caden Stearns is. It was so much fun to sit down with him at Eisenhower's in Austin this past weekend, but this is not the point of the video. The reason why I'm talking to you guys 10:30 at night is the massive news that dropped today. SEC Media Day going on right now, and boom, they come out of nowhere and say Texas and OU has been back channeling and in serious discussions, according to the Houston Chronicle, and been confirmed by almost every major media outlet in the country at this point, that again, Texas and OU are looking to move to the SEC, and not just looking to move, but they're seriously looking to move. Timetable not really set, but could be, I've heard, as early as 2025, maybe possibly sooner. So as a Texas fan, the OU fans out there that follow this channel, what are your thoughts on this? Because you guys are tuning in to listen to Steve right now, I have been consistent, and for those of you who followed me for a very long time, I even went on RJ Young's show and said this, I have told you conference realignment is coming. I've said the super conferences are coming. All of this is the genesis of the super conferences. And when we're talking about super conferences, we're talking about, in my mind, massive semi-regional conferences of 16 or more teams, and really breaking this more, instead of a Power Five, more of a dynamic of, I think at the end of the day, probably by the 2030s, you'll have four massive conferences, massive super conferences. And why is this? Obviously, people will point directly to the money. People will point to the massive SEC, ESPN TV deal that is coming. And Texas wants in on that money. OU wants in on that money. Texas has not really been thrilled with their experience in the Big 12. And I'm not talking about on the field results. We know that Texas has not held up their end of the bargain, specifically on the football field. We're well aware of that, trust me. But when we're talking business and we're talking about brands and who is bringing eyeballs to the table, who's bringing money to the table, you're talking about two blue blood programs in Texas and Oklahoma with massive fan bases and influence. And it's funny because when I heard this news, I immediately thought of Paul Feinbaum when he went on First Take or Get Up or whatever show it was on ESPN and said that Texas is irrelevant. I know that's out of context to what he was saying, but eventually saying Texas is irrelevant, why are we talking about them? But we go to Paul Feinbaum today at SEC Media Day, and he told you all the truth, right? What Paul said was the SEC will take these two teams, if for nothing else, to keep them away from the Big Ten, to keep them away from the ACC or the Pac-12 or the other conferences. Why did he say it that way? Because they know the Big 12 is blowing up. They know this is the end. Now, if you're Oklahoma State, I've seen reactions I saw the statement from Oklahoma State, whether it's Baylor, other schools in the conferences, they're furious. They had no idea this was coming. And even though I've been screaming from the mountaintops that conference realignment is coming, the timing of this news being right now, I didn't see that. So that is what's more so surprising, is the timing of all of this. But as we get back to Paul Feinbaum, essentially he's saying Texas and OU are giving the SEC first right of refusal, and the SEC is going to jump all over it. Now, you're going to have two schools in particular, Texas A&M and Missouri, former Big 12 participants, who are not thrilled with Texas and jumped away, especially Texas A&M, which wants to, part of their selling card their sales pitch to recruits, especially in the state of Texas, is we are the only school in Texas that's in the SEC. And we know they cut up with their SEC blankets every single night they go to bed. That goes away. Now, they will point to, well, Texas fans, you guys have been, critical because you're not in the SEC, blah, blah, blah. Look, when we come to the SEC, and this is going to sound super arrogant, it's to partner. It's not to necessarily, yes, we will be a part of the conference, but it is to partner for a part of a bigger conglomerate that is happening. This is a corporate merger, corporate acquisition. You know, when you talk about Texas and OU coming to the table, and the eyeballs and the branding that we bring, it is different, right? And so you're talking about the you know, the aspect of the reach that the SEC will have, and eventually the beginning of the super conferences. Now, this also coincides with name, image, likeness, and this 12-team playoff. The last domino that we needed to fall is realignment. And the NCAA has had so much power and sway with all of these things, but now that name, image, likeness is in effect, now that this 12-team playoff has a date, it is going into effect. Thinking backwards, it is not surprising that the last thing to come is the realignment conversations. And I think at some point you'll get to where you have really the entire Midwest, so Big Ten. They'll probably, you know, if I was them, I'd take, you know, the Iowa States and some of these other teams out there. I would think the West would just take over, you know, BYU, all these other teams become one, and then the entire, really the East Coast up through the Northeast becomes a super region, and you just have these regions split off. So instead of the AAC or the ACC, you know, and I'm bringing in Group of Five conferences as well. I'm not just talking about Power Five schools here in particular. So, I mean, and this is where I will end the video because it's late and I'm tired. And I'm going to talk to Brad about this. I'm going to talk to Tran. I want to have a lot of different people's opinions on it because it's such a massive story that is going to play out over time. But my last thought in particular really boils down to the evolution of college football in itself. This sport, this game is changing, and it has been changing at a rapid pace. I'm 32 years old. This is not the same college football where we selected national champions based upon the polls. This is not the same sport where we had our BCS bowls and they carried weight. We've gone into a playoff era. We're now in the name, image, likeness era. We're going into a 12-team playoff era. We've had opt-outs. The game evolves. It changes. It's also, I mean, at one point, you know, we've had rule changes with, you know, how many scholarship players you can have and how you can pay out scholarships. So much of the game has evolved, will always continue to evolve. And college football is not the only sport that is evolving. You look at the NBA, Giannis Antetokounmpo is from Greece. It's a global game. The NBA is a global game. You have an MVP and Nikola Jokic. You have a rising superstar on the cover of NBA 2K and Luka Doncic. They are growing outward. The biggest name in Major League Baseball is Ohtani from Japan. And, you know, you guys saw the controversy with Stephen A. Smith. He doesn't speak English on camera, and he's the biggest star in the sport, and it's really not close right now. They're growing outward. They're branching outward. The NFL is going to 17 games. The NFL is signing a new TV deal that's already been signed, but the money's coming into effect next year. Why do you guys think they've been playing games in London? It's just a matter of time until there's an NFL franchise outside the continental United States. Growing outward. This is college football's way of growing outward. This case is all over sports. So if you're a consumer of sports, those of you who are way older than me, you've seen sports grow outward. And this is what's happening right now. And I know it's a lot to take in for the traditionalist. I get it. And there's some things you don't want to mess with and don't want to change. And you don't like seeing these changes. But if you're Texas and you have to be in business, it's better to skate ahead of the puck and determine your fate. Because Texas can go at they can go wherever they really want because they're going to get those votes in the SEC. But it's better to skate ahead of the puck and control your fate than be left like Oklahoma State or TCU and find out this news the same day Steven at Fanatic Perspective found out the news. You don't want to end up in that position. So guys, this is some serious stuff. It's been really, really interesting and fascinating to watch just the entire business side of college football evolve in one off season. So stay tuned, be more. Like I said, the Caden Stearns video will be dropping tomorrow night. We will premiere that on this channel. Y'all, please help subscribe. I didn't mention it at the beginning, but I should have. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna go get some rest. We'll be back at it tomorrow. And I'll try to link up with some other people to continue to have this conversation. But remember, horns always up. Peace.